In this video we're going to look at glazing techniques in watercolour. All you need is some watercolours in 3 colours. I'm using alizarin crimson, lemon yellow and French ultramarine. You need a decent piece of watercolour paper. This is Bockingford 300 grams per square metre. It's got a nice sizing on it, which means that the watercolour will move around nicely on it. And you need 2 pots of water, one for your dirty water and one for clean water. This means that you're always picking up nice fresh pigment. The watercolours that I'm using are from a pan, and I've just added some water to them to get them nice and thin, because glazing is all about layers. Okay, so to begin with, take a pencil and draw yourself some lines. It doesn't matter where they go, just have fun drawing yourself a few lines across your paper. And then cross some the other way, and you can put some circles in there. You can put some twiddly lines in there. Lovely, that'll do. Next, find yourself a nice soft brush. So I'm going to show you a few brushes here. This one, it's a cheap brush. It's synthetic end. Love synthetics. I really don't like taking hair from animals to make brushes. But it's too hard for a glazing technique. If you try and use a brush that's this firm, you'll end up moving your paint around, which isn't what we want to do. One brush which I really love, a brush range, is the SAA, do an imitation sable range. Nice and soft. Still got some structure to it, still quite pointy. And then I have a really soft brush here. It says it's squirrel. Now I don't know whether it is or not. This was given to me, or actually I think I inherited it. I would never buy a real animal brush though, as I've already said. So we will use the imitation sable one. What I'm going to do first of all is just pick up some yellow and paint the whole of one of these sections with the yellow. Nice, plenty of liquid. I always turn around, if I'm working to a line, I always turn my paper around and keep the point of the brush against that line. That means I've got maximum control. So clean my brush in my dirty water first, back in my clean water, and I'm going to do another yellow line, and I'll show you that technique again. So point of the brush against the line. Can you see how the belly of the brush is touching the paper? Pick up a bit more paint, point of the brush against the line, belly of the brush touching the paper. Now the point of the brush is against the edge of where the watercolour ended. Now I've reached this line here, so I need to turn it around so that I can get the accuracy that I'm looking for. Point of the brush against the line, belly of the brush touching the paper, and it's met the rest of the yellow that I did coming in the other direction. Does that make sense? And it's nice and smooth. I've got no hard edges, because each time I'm working I'm not letting that edge dry out as I go. Alrighty, let's see, let's put another yellow bit in somewhere. I think I might just put a yellow bit there in there. So again, I'm turning my paper around. I always do this, always. So I've got the point of the brush against the line that I want to be accurate with. I can't control the belly of the brush, I can control the point of the brush. Okay, so that's my yellow done. I'm going to let that dry and then come back and add some red next. So my yellow watercolour is dry now. How can I tell? If I put the back of my fingers against the paper where there's no paint at all and just feel the temperature, and then if I put the back of my fingers against the yellow paint, if this yellow feels colder than the white paper where you've not painted, it's not dry yet. You can use a hairdryer to help you along. It'll be a bit faster if you do that, and if you do use a hairdryer you'll find that your paper will curl. Just turn it over and dry it on the back as well. So dry it on the front, dry it on the back, and your paper will flatten itself out again. So let's add some red. I'm just going to put a bit more water in this because it's dried out as I've been talking. Okay, I think I might even put a bit more on again, more water in again. So I'm cleaning my brush in my dirty water, pick up some clean water and add that to my red to make it nice and thin, nice and liquidy. Right, so now I'm going to pick a different section to paint red. So which way shall I go? Actually, I've just discovered I've not got enough lines on here, so I'm going to go, just going to go and put another line in. And now I'm going to paint this section with the red. Lots of juicy colour on there. Using the point of the brush and a really, really soft touch. The belly of the brush is touching the paper and the point of the brush against the line. There we go. Next line goes along, the point of the brush touches my old line, the edge of the wet paint. I'm not going back over to the other side. I'm not going over where I've already painted. Okay, I'll turn around. Point of the brush to my line, belly of the brush on the paper so that it touches and meets up with where the paint was before. Okay, all the way along, right the way to the end, and that's it. Do not go back over where you've already been, only go over it once. If you practice on small bits of paper like this is just a postcard size piece of paper, 4 by 6 inches mine is. If you practice it on small pieces of paper, then you're not going to feel like you've wasted paper if it all goes wrong. And you can see here the effect of the yellow and the red have made a nice orange colour in there. So let's find another section of red to paint. I'm going to completely avoid this area. I don't want to go anywhere near that one. I need a line that's completely separate from it. That's so that my new paint doesn't mix in with the old paint which isn't dry yet. So this bit down here, I think will do to make sure you can see that. So I'm going to go along here. Point of the brush touches the line, the belly of the brush is dragging along the paper. Back in here, point of the brush against my where the paint has just reached. Here again, all the way to the end. Lovely. You can also pick your paper up to encourage it to go where you want it to. But don't mess with the brush. Don't fiddle. Looking at where my lines are now, I've got one more section that I can do without it interfering at all, so I'm going to paint this one here. And I'm still always turning this paper. If there's one thing you take away from today, it's turn your paper around and use the point of the brush against your line and the belly of the brush on the paper. There we go. So wash my brush in the dirty water, wash it in the clean water, and I'm going to go and get the hairdryer on that now. So that one's dry now, hopefully. The red is hopefully dry. What I learned from that though was that my yellow before wasn't completely dry, and I've got some little watermarks in there. If you can, be patient and wait for it to dry naturally, you'll get a better result, because when you're drying it with a hairdryer it pushes the water around, so it's better to dry it naturally, but if you haven't got time, hairdryer's usually fine. So now I'm going to come in with some blue. Just shuffle my camera across, it seems to have moved. There we go. So I'm going to add some blue in here now. This is ultramarine that I'm using. And I'm just going to glaze right the way across here. Got lots of blue paint mixed up. It's nice and liquid. Turn it around. Point of the brush against the line. Belly of the brush dragging along the paper and meeting up with the edge that I created going in the other direction. Okay, and can you see the way these colours are mixing together, glazing across each other? And there we go, so we've got very delicate purples developing. Let me see, I think we'll do this circle now. So, point of the brush against the line, and now I'm going to have to turn my paper a lot in order to keep that point of the brush against the line. I'm also going to have to make water out of the way. Pick up some more paint, point of the brush against the line, not letting any of these edges dry out as I go. So round we go, and can you see how nice and liquid that is? And there we go, and then we just let that dry. I've got a little puddle there, so I'm holding it up so that that puddle disperses. And that's it. And I can see I can do this section over here. Just check you can see what I can see. Yes, you can. So again, point of the brush against the line. It may sound repetitive, but I'm going to keep saying it because it is really important. Turn the paper, and the belly of the brush is dragging along. And there we go, all met up. Lovely. So now I need to let this section dry. Alrighty, so it's all dry. I used a hairdryer. If you don't have one, just like I said, just let it dry naturally. And if you want to, you can have several of these on the go at once so that you're not getting frustrated. And that'll help you just to put one aside to dry, and then you can work on another one whilst that one's drying. I'm going back to yellow again now, so I've mixed up a little more yellow over here, and I'm going to fill this section in here now. So as before, point of the brush against the line, and along we go. So I'm going over a bit that's already had yellow in it, which is going to make it more yellow. I've made a bit of an error here, and I don't quite think I've mixed enough yellow. Let's see, hopefully we'll make it through without needing to stop. So what's happened here is that as I've been using the hairdryer, The yellow has also been getting warm and it's gone like hardly any liquid left in it. But there we go, I just about made it. So I'm going to mix a bit more yellow now, clean my brush in the dirty water first, then in the clean water, then pick up some more yellow into my palette. This is one instance where you do need to use your palette. Quite often when I'm painting watercolours I don't bother with the palette, I just go straight from the pan to the paper. But for glazing you need it because you need your paint to be diluted. You need it to be liquid. And I think I'm going to go for this squiggly line here next. So you can see it's just the same technique every time. Turning my paper. Not letting any of these sections dry out, not letting any of my edges dry out, because that's when hard edges form. Which is why your paint needs to be quite liquid, and you need to work reasonably quickly. Okay, and you can start to see how this is building up, and you can see how the paints are mixing with each other, the colours are coming through. It's nice dilute paint, so it's retaining the translucency. I might just do one more. No, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna. Yeah, I'll do one more yellow down here. There we go. And I think that'll do. I'll dry that out and come back. From here, you can honestly just keep painting to your heart's content. Just add to, or whichever sections you feel like adding to. Keep building it up. You don't have to follow the exact lines that you followed before, so there I took out this little section here and added some red to it. When you stop is your choice. You can just keep going. I would stop though when it stops. When one of your sections starts to look like it's beginning to lose its translucency, stop at that point. Leave some sections really pale, like I've just got one layer of yellow here, I've got two layers of yellow here. Oh, is it here? No, I think it's here. Two layers of yellow here. I've got somewhere here where I've got all three colours together. And yeah, just keep going, have a play with it, and you'll probably find it's really nice and relaxing. If you get some cauliflowers like I did here, don't worry about it, just learn from it. It really doesn't matter. So, to recap, we're using a nice thin consistency of paint, plenty of liquid to pigment. We need a soft round brush. Synthetic is okay, but it needs to be a really soft one, not a firm synthetic brush. And not a flat brush either, so if the brush is too firm it will disturb the paint underneath, and a flat brush tends to have a lot of structure behind it, so that can also disturb the paint that's underneath, and you just want the paint that's underneath to sit there and do nothing. You need 2 or 3 pots of water. So you're going to clean your brush in the dirty pot, then the middle pot of water, and then pick up clean water for going back into your paints. That way you keep your paints nice and clean, they don't get muddy. You need a really good quality watercolour paper. This is so important. Paper that I was using was a Bockingford, 300 grams per square metre. And Bockingford paper has a really nice sizing on it, so the paint will move on top of it without soaking into the paper. Problems that can occur are, as you saw, I got some cauliflowers because I hadn't let the paint underneath dry well enough. Thought it was dry, but actually it wasn't. The other way that you can get cauliflowers forming is if your second layer of paint has more water in it than the first layer of paint. So you need your next layer of paint has to either have the same amount of water in it or slightly less water in it than the layer underneath. So if you've got cauliflowers forming, just have a look and see if that's what's happening, because the excess water in your subsequent layers can just push the paint out of the way underneath. Okay, I think that's everything. If you've got any questions, drop me a comment below, and I'll see if I can answer them. Have fun.